The other day, I was on my first ever solo hike. A bit nervous and unsure about what I was doing, but trekking through the countryside farmland when all of a sudden the path just stopped. There was a locked gate blocking the public footpath. No signs, no way through, just a locked gate and a barbed wire fence. Even though I had every legal right to pass through, somebody clearly didn't want me there. And it's not just me. From overgrown nettles blocking paths to mysteriously missing footpath signs, it's happening all over. So I spent the rest of my hike wondering, are landowners quiet quitting right to roam? In this video, I want to share a bit more about my experience navigating public right-of-way and explore the bigger conversation around public access to nature and right-to-roam laws in England. England specifically because that's where I have the most experience and that's where I live, but Cymru has the same laws as us, but I have a sneaky suspicion they're a bit more laid back than we are, but if you're Welsh, let me know, I could be completely wrong. Now, first things first, let's get one thing clear. I firmly believe that we all need access to nature, not just for a hobby, but for our mental health, our sense of connection to the planet, and ultimately our drive to protect it. But here's where it gets complicated, because I also understand why some landowners don't want strangers traipsing all through their crop fields or past their homes at any given time. So this isn't a rant. I don't think there's a simple solution, but I do think it's worth talking about regardless, because when you block people's ability to access nature, you also block their ability to care about it. And with the state of our climate, I think that's a really big deal. Let's talk about right to roam, what it is, why it matters, and why this moment on my solo hike made me think about the issue more than ever. So let's talk about it. In England, only 8% of land is accessible by the public. That's it. And even that is often surrounded on all sides by private land with no public right-of-way, meaning that the only way to reach these open access areas is to trespass to get to them. Most of the countryside is privately owned, and in fact, half of England is owned by less than 1% of the population. We do have a network of public footpaths, which is great in theory, but in practice, these paths can be deliberately hidden, neglected, or illegally blocked off with very little consequences. This happened to me just the other week. It was my first ever solo hike. Something I'd been building up to for a while and something I was a bit nervous about, being a first-time solo female hiker. So I planned my route very carefully, made sure I was only using public footpaths, checked pictures, checked Google Maps, checked reviews of the route on all trails, packed my kit, and set off with high hopes. Everything seemed fine at first, albeit with a few nerves. But the route was getting weirdly hard to follow the further I went along it. Public footpaths were overgrown, right-of-way signs were broken or mysteriously missing, and at one point I got stuck behind that locked gate. All of this was on a public footpath, which is, for the record, illegal, by the way. It was suddenly very clear to me that the people in this area didn't want me or any other hiker anywhere near their properties. When you're already nervous to be out there alone, already doubting yourself, your skills, and your safety, that kind of realization can really knock your confidence. And had it been my first ever hike, I might not have come back out. And that's the part that really worries me. Now, before I go full ban the billionaires from owning hillsides, which could do, I want to acknowledge that it's complicated. A lot of the landowners around these popular hiking locations, like for me, the Peak District, are actually farmers who survive by making a living from their property. Imagine spending your days raising livestock, growing crops, and getting up at ungodly hours of the day in order to do all of that, only to have strangers traipsing through your fields, occasionally with off-lead dogs, occasionally dropping litter, and occasionally leaving gates open or scaring animals. That would wear anyone down, and for the record, I don't like those people either. And even if they didn't have annoying hikers to contend with, you have to remember that rural life isn't an idyllic, stress-free job to begin with. Farmers don't just get to access the outdoors whenever they fancy it. They have to face the increasing pressure from climate change, economic uncertainty, and shifting government policies every single day. So I really do feel for them. They probably see us hikers as yet another problem to manage. Even if, hypothetically, everyone followed the countryside code perfectly, I don't think I'd love it if people randomly strolled through my garden either. But this is where my opinion shifts a bit. My garden doesn't have a public footpath going through it. And the public right-of-way system has been in place for quite a while now, officially since 1949. That's over 70 years, and that's not even taking into account the potential hundreds of years of historical use. If you bought the land within the last 70 years, you were told when you bought it that there was a public footpath going through it. If you inherited, you probably grew up knowing too. So it's not like people walking through are a new and surprising problem. And I understand that it may feel like self-defense against a few bad apples, but when you choose to obscure signs, lock gates, or purposefully try and make routes harder to navigate in the hopes that walkers just stop coming, what you're actually doing is blocking beginners, families, young people, and anyone who's just starting to build a relationship with the outdoors. So why does this matter? Well, nature should be for everyone, not just for people who can afford a car or private land or fancy gear. In a world that's increasingly digital, disconnected, and stressful, the first good experiences someone has in the outdoors can be life-changing. If your first hike ends with you feeling like a trespasser, you might not ever try hiking again. Which is where the bigger issue comes in for me. How can we expect people to protect the environment, or care about biodiversity, or support climate action when they never get the chance to fall in love with the outdoors in the first place? I've said it once and I'll say it again. I truly believe the best way to get people to care about the environment is to get them outside. That's why I started making these hiking videos, and it's literally the entire mission of my channel. And it's why this issue of public access matters so much to me. The more time people spend in nature, the more they're going to care about it. Which brings me to something which really hit home when I was researching this video. Something that the Right to Roam campaign group said. Access to nature is essential to our physical and mental health, and without a connection to the natural world, we're less likely to care about it and unable to act to protect it. And that's exactly it. If we want to tackle climate change, protect biodiversity, and build a more sustainable future, we need people to have a relationship with the outdoors, to build that connection and experience it firsthand. If landowners and farmers start literally gatekeeping the great outdoors from the next generation, the people who are just starting to give hiking or any other outdoorsy hobby a go, eventually there won't be anyone left who wants to protect it. And one of the most tragic things about that is that farmers are literally some of the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. They're on the front lines of floods, droughts, rising temperatures. These are real threats to their livelihoods. And without public support for climate action, it's only going to get worse. So if you're a farmer or a landowner who blocks the public footpath on your property, how do you hope to build that support if the public never get the chance to see, understand, or value the land itself firsthand? So where does that leave us? I don't think you have to be on one side or the other. We can believe in responsible access and empathise with the challenges that landowners, or at least farmers, face. I think the answer there lies in the words responsible access. Not just for landowners to follow the law, but for all of us to be thoughtful about how we use these spaces. I don't have all of the solutions, of course. I'm just yapping about something I have a few opinions on. But if we're talking micro scale, I think we can all try doing our bit and set a good example when it comes to being respectful and responsible for where we roam. That means following the 7 principles of leave no trace and calling out / respectfully giving advice to people who stray from these principles. I want to see people leaving it better than they found it, picking up litter, sticking to paths, being kind to wildlife, respecting privacy, learning the history of the area, sharing knowledge. That's the version of outdoor access I want to see more of. On a more macro scale though, I'm thinking back to Right to Roam. Right to Roam not just as in the idea, but as in the organisation. I have one of the Right to Roam books here, actually. Zooming out a bit, if you didn't know, land access laws in the UK differ from country to country. Right to Roam are campaigning for expanded access across England and Wales, aiming for a more Scottish-style approach to the outdoors, where responsible access is a right, not just a privilege. That doesn't just include walking too, like our rules here. Everyone in Scotland has the right to all forms of non-motorised access across most land and inland water, meaning they can walk, swim, canoe, kayak, and camp to their heart's content, thanks to the Land Reform Act of 2003. The reason it works, and it's not a complete bedlam, is because it's underpinned by 3 basic rules. Take responsibility for your own actions, respect the interests of other people, and care for the environment. Crucially, these rules apply to both the people accessing the land and the owners of the land, which already feels like a more mutually respectful setup to me. Apparently, it's also cheaper, by the way. While I am very jealous of the Scots, I think it does show that a better system is possible, one that allows the public to be respectful stewards rather than intruders. And I genuinely think that's the future we need. One where your first hike isn't your last because a gate was locked or a farmer shouted at you or you just didn't feel welcome. One where people are connected to the outdoors, not shut out of it. Of course, access needs to be responsible, and yes, landowners of course need support too. But the answer isn't less access. It's better, clearer, more inclusive access and mutual respect. I think my final thought on this is that right now, the most important thing for us to remember is to use the paths that we do have access to respectfully and responsibly, because when we show that we care for the land as well, it's much harder to argue that we shouldn't have access to it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever come across an obstructed footpath? Or if you're a farmer or a landowner, what do you think we can change about the system to make it work better for you? If you're wondering what responsible access actually looks like in practice, I have a video on the 7 principles of leave no trace that you can check out in the description, along with a link explaining how to report blocked footpaths, and one to the Right to Roam organisation as well. Thanks for watching.